So, over the past decade of making beats, I've used hundreds of plugins. Some have become my absolute go-tos, while some have just been a complete waste of money. In this video, I'm going to share with you my top 10 plugins that I think every producer should have. Starting with plugin number 1. Let's be real. We love putting stuff on our melodies to get something completely new and switch up the whole vibe. One of my favorites to do this is FX Motions by Arturia. It's a creative plugin and it has a bit of everything in there. Some modulation, some filters, and whatever sound you put this on, you can really give it a completely different feel. Here's a melody that I've created with another producer. Really vibey. And this is the main sound. And I've got effects motion on it, so let's just add in. You can hear like it just completely switches up everything. This could be cool as a breakdown section. They got loads and loads of different presets that you can flick through. Or you could even design with all the options that they got here. To be honest, because there's so many different presets, usually I just pick one and flick through until I find something that I think fits whatever that I'm trying to do. It's very useful if you run out of ideas or you're reaching certain creative blocks. Just throw this on and it can inspire something completely new. I also want to give an honorary mention to something that's very, very similar to this plugin, made by Arturia too, and it's called Fragments. Kind of similar to Motions, I'd use this mainly for melodies to just switch up the vibe. But I feel like with Fragments, it adds like little artifacts just to really enhance the melody and just take it in a new direction. This is really good, especially if you're trying to go for something a bit more moody or a bit more watery. Think like those old Drake kind of beats. When it comes to delays, there's really only one plugin that I like to use. And that's the second plugin on my list, called H Delay by Waves. This plugin is perfect for when you're recording vocals and you just want to have like a nice lush delay in the background. Or I use this a lot as well for when I'm trying to make a catchy repetitive melody. Here's a track that I'm working on that has a vocal. So you can hear it has a half beat delay and it makes the vocal just more prominent, dramatic in the mix. I like this way more than just using a stock one because you can really go in depth. You can mess around with the high pass and the low pass of the delay. Make it more subtle. I also like to put the delay on ping pong as well. One thing I would say though, when you use this plugin, you really have to dial it in because the effects are very crazy. For example, if I have the wet up, the delay gets really strong. Or if you put the feedback up too high, and it will just keep on going and going. Sometimes though, there might be a time and a place where you do want to keep the wet and the feedback really high. So for example, in this track, after the drop, I wanted something repetitive. So now I have the delays going crazy and it's just really going and going. And that lingering aspect adds to the beat. Reverb is a super essential effect when it comes to music production. Probably the most common used effect. But honestly, most producers actually don't put any thought into what kind of reverbs they're using. And the truth is, not all reverb is built the same. The third plugin on my list is by far my favorite reverb to use. And it's called Capital Chambers by UAD. The reason why I love this reverb, not only does it sound good, but it's very visual. So you can, again, kind of construct the reverb exactly how you want. So you can pick the mic. What I usually do is kind of play and switch between mics to try and hear a difference. And then you can decide the distance of the mics as well. It also got different rooms which all give different kinds of reverbs. So listening to this vocal again, this is how it sounds completely dry. Now just to give it a little bit of essence, we're going to add some of this Capital Chambers. And the reverb just sounds so sweet. They've got a toggle button here which is the wetness of it. So if we put that on, it makes it sound really dramatic and washes it out. But usually I like to keep the mix down. And I like to keep my width really high. We can also mess around with where the reverb is hitting as well. We can take it out the bass, even filter with the EQ. If we hear it within the mix, I think this is like a good sweet spot. Using a good quality reverb like Capital Chambers is going to make the sound a bit more authentic, a bit more realistic, adding character instead of maybe just a stock reverb that kind of sounds a bit too synthetic. In the past, the big issue with these UAD plugins, you would have to have a UAD interface. This is my audio interface by UAD, and to run any of these plugins, I have to make sure this is turned on. But now you can actually just download it straight to your computer and you're good to go. The fourth plugin on my list is Effects Rack by Sound Toys, and this plugin right here probably is the best value for money. All the plugins that come from Sound Toys in one space, and they have a bunch of different presets that you can choose, and based on the preset, it's the combination of all these plugins in one place. Slightly similar to the first plugin, Motions. It's a creative plugin, so I'd put it on a sound to kind of get a different vibe, but I feel like this one is a very good all-in-one plugin in terms of having reverb, echoes, delays. It does everything really well. So here's a sample that I made. So to get this kind of underwater feeling, this moody feeling, I had to add a lot of plugins. We start with this vocal here,
I can let you do this,
which sounds cool. It's from Splice, so probably everyone has that sample. So I wanted to just make it sound a little bit different. So within Sound Toys, first thing I did, instead of changing up the pitch, they got this plugin called Little Auto Boy where you can mess around with the formants. I can let you do this. So now it just sounds like a different vibe. And then for the switch up here, I whacked on Effects Rack, and I mean, there's so many different presets that you can flick through to try and find something that sounds good. I really like to use it for this echo plugin called Echo Boy Junior. You can adjust the times and it works just like a delay. But then they got really cool things like tape, which can make it sound a little bit older, but the emulation is good. It doesn't make it sound cheap and really synthetic. I also love to use Pan Man, which just pans the sound from left to right. The fifth plugin that's on my list is Shaperbox 3. And again, this is another good all-rounder plugin. I use it a lot when I need to make things move a little bit more, when things are just too static, give it a bit more motion, a bit more dynamics. Within Shaperbox, they do have a bunch of different presets. Honestly, I've flicked through the majority of them one by one, trying to hear the best ones, and I've pretty much favorited the ones that I like the most. Every now and again, if I just want to switch up the vibe, I'll choose one of these presets. But what I do like about Shaperbox the most is how customizable it is. You can start with a basic shape and then customize it to exactly how you want. Here's the track that I was working on, and I used Shaperbox in a few different ways just to try and really get it moving. So I got these chords right here, and I wanted to just try and find like a lead or something that fit on top. I was trying to play around and I feel like I was just doing too much. So over here, I just pitched it up, flicked through some presets, and I found like this one worked. And it's just a combination of those shaper tools. It's got a filter, it's got this volume automation, which is basically like a side chain. And it gave me this, which I layered on top as like a transition effect. So now with those chords together in the background, you might be familiar with these plugins as well, Halftime and Kickstart. Halftime, half the time, Kickstart is sidechaining plugin. Shaperbox is like the bigger version of it, like the daddy of it, I guess you could say. It has the Halftime and the Kickstart built into it with just way more options. And you can go really in depth with how you want to shape your sounds. But definitely a plugin that I use on bunch of my tracks. The sixth plugin on my list is Smack Attack by Waves, and this is a transient shaper plugin. I use this mainly to sharpen sounds and get rid of excess reverb that I don't really want from a sample. So here's some drum loops that I chopped up. It sounds cool, but I felt like when I had my kick in, it was just doing too much. So I turned on Smack Attack and took the sustain down, so you can hear the sounds are getting sharper. It's almost as like I've taken out the whole reverb. And then what I like about this plugin too, compared to any other transient marker, it makes it sound as natural as possible, so it doesn't sound so clicky. So for example, things are too loud and it's going crazy, but they've got a limit and a clipper on it. So to put the limiter on it, now everything is kind of like squished and it sounds like all the same level, which is perfect. So we've literally gone from sounding like this, clicky and reverby, to way sharper now. Just before I show you a free plugin, I want to talk about the 7th plugin on my list, which is one of my favorite plugins. It is The Spirit by Cradle. It's a multi-effect plugin, great for adding space, great for adding depth. It was created by Louis Bell. He's produced a ton of hits for Post Malone, and I think it's mainly meant to be used for vocals, but I like to actually use it for my melodies. So here's a sample that I put together. And then it gets busier towards the end. So there's a lot happening, there's a lot going on within this sample. And rather than deleting stuff, I just wanted to carve space for different sounds. So I got this synth line here. I've put The Spirit on it. It comes with a few precise presets and they all kind of say what it does. So this one is good for background vocals, just to wash out sounds. Or more presence, which just really makes it more intense. I put on Wide and Drenched, and what it's doing is basically widening the sound, making it more stereo, but then adding a lot of reverb on top of it as well, just so it sounds more like in the background, so it's less busy now. And it's not so much as like the main prominent sound. And of course, just like all the other plugins, you can customize it, turn down the mix on the reverb, turn down the stereo, EQ it slightly. It's all kind of down to you. But yeah, whenever I feel like things are just too cluttered and I don't really want to delete sounds, I'd start to mess around with The Spirit just to put things into the background and put some layers more in the forefront. The 8th plugin on my list is Tal Chorus. And the great thing about this plugin, it's free. I know you love a good freebie. This is one that might as well grab. There's one thing only, and it does it really, really well. It adds chorus to whatever sound you put it on. I think it's based on the Juno 106 chorus. So here's the piano sound without chorus. Then let's add some in. We can adjust the wet or the width and just make it even more intense. That's as simple as it. The 9th plugin on my list is Stark by Clevgrand. I've been using this plugin for years. It's essentially an amp / pedals kind of emulation effects plugin. Here's a guitar sample that I made. Just a very chill vibe. The main chords is right here. And to get it to sound the way that it does, I've just added in Stark. So we've got a little bit of vibrato, but if we go here, we can add a bunch of different things like reverb, phasers, flangers. They also got a few different amps here. All of them have different character and can make it sound really aggressive. Also, like the stereo spread on here, we can make it mono or really stretch it out. And add some ambience, which I guess is just some reverb. But it's really, really good when it comes to layers of your guitar. So we can make it sound really wobbly. I like to have that down. Maybe just a tiny bit of flanger could work well as well. It's all together now. Good Swiss Army knife for guitar sounds. Even if you don't play guitar and you use a guitar VST, if you put this on there, it will make it sound a little bit more realistic. And number 10 on my list, which I'm plugging, is my Elements plugin. I got to work on this plugin in 2020 and dropped it in 2021. And it was a lot of hard work putting this together, but I essentially designed it from scratch and wanted to create something that's an all-in-one plugin that you can just whack onto anything and keep going with your workflow, but yet inspire some creativity. It's got 4 different sections: wind, which is essentially reverb; motion, which is some modulation; wave, which is different filters, and you can have low pass or high pass. And then we've got tone and heat, which is overdrive and distortion. You can use it for anything from 808s to melody sounds. And the secret thing, which not many people know about, is if you actually click Elements, this is a chorus effect. It's got some presets here too that you can check out. And for the next 48 hours, I'm gonna put a coupon code in the description where you can get 50% off Elements. I'm very, very proud of this plugin and I hope you enjoy it too. All the plugins that I mentioned in this video are gonna be linked down below. But let's say you're on a budget, you don't really have a ton of money to spend on these plugins. Don't worry, I got you. I created a video where I went through the top 10 free plugins that you can go ahead and download. Check it out right here.